our central sun is full spectrum light. We in the Earth have been living on, let's say, they call it half orotronic light. We've sustained ourselves with that amount of sun and photon energy coming. But what's coming is highly more elevated than that. And we didn't have the capacity to interpret that. So what we've been receiving, those of us that have been getting, light codes, it's an upgrade for us to hold more light and higher frequencies so that this stuff that's coming at us, we understand how to interpret it.
Mm.
So back to Telos. This particular day, I went with the intention. A few days earlier, I had sat in this spot. It's at the top of, as far as you can drive up, it's at the end of what's called the Everett Memorial Highway. When you drive out of town, you can follow this up and drive almost to 8,000 feet. And from there, you can, hike a number of trails. When I had been there before, I spotted an area that it was definitely off trail. But when I saw it at noon a few days earlier, the shadows were cast, and so it almost looked like cave openings. So I thought, well, it's not that far from here. What would it take? 30 or 40 minutes to get to it. And I just wanted to go explore it, thinking that I might find some kind of cave opening. So that Sunday when I went, I had noticed some energetic places on the hike up to the area that I would end up sitting in for a while. And at each one, I wanted to stop and kind of take the energy in and exchange it. And then I'd see one a little bit higher and a little bit bigger. So I'd move to that one. And then eventually I saw one that was against the mountain. Now, Mount Shasta is directly in front of me. And where I actually am, this is her sister, Shastina, off to her left from where I was on the south end. And when I climbed up to this spot, there were 3 boulders that came out and almost formed this cool little place where you could sit in here. So the boulder on this side was narrow and a little bit higher than my inseam. So I could crawl up and over it. And when I did, I looked back in the distance off into the parking lot and, there's nobody around me at all. I can see off in the distance where I came from. And so I planted my light like every light worker, and then I sat down. Well, there's no way anybody is definitely going to see me now. And so I leaned up against the mountain, and the only thing between me is some, dried brush. I'm listening to music on my earpods. I had some water and I had some grapes. And once I finished my refreshments, I had put that away and the music stopped. I couldn't understand why. My phone was fully charged when I left the vehicle not that long ago. And so I sat up because I always carried in my back, left pocket. And when I pulled the phone around to look at it, there's no power. Well, while I'm trying to fire it up, I feel a breeze from behind me. And when I turned around to look, wherever I was leaning up, whatever solid surface, is now gone, and there's an opening probably a foot taller than I am into the mountain. So I stand up and look down, and I can see a rise, and then it almost as though this goes downward. And as the light begins to adjust so that I can see into this capacity, this cavity, it looks like there's somebody down there, kind of on the left-hand side. And as soon as that thought came into my head, some voice said, would you like to see Telos? And, you get a little jolt through you because none of this is what you expected. And of course I wanted to see that. So I started to make my way down, and what I thought was maybe an adult being, maybe about my size, and I'm 6 feet tall. This was not a 6 foot tall being when I got there. Alex, that's what he said I could call him, was over 8 feet tall. he was a Lemurian. So those of you that have this preconception about Lemurian, he looks like a pretty typical Lemurian, tall. He was dressed in like this white cloak, but he had these colored ribbons, and they were just so noticeable. I didn't know if that was representative of some rank that he held or whether that was just his idea of bling. I didn't know, but you couldn't ignore it. His complexion and his being was just freaking flawless. Now, it won't be until later that I'll put together that these are crystalline beings and they would look flawless. They're not carbon bodied, and so they're not affected by the same wear and tear and maintenance that these bodies require. So the good news is that this is where we're going, gang. Anyway, he said, "You can call me Alex." I said, "Well, that'll be easy to remember because that's my son's name." He said, "Yeah, we know about your son. You know, follow me." So as we're walking down this incline, I can see that there's a source of light coming from the other way. And when we get down closer to the bottom of wherever it is, I look back to see where we came from, and it's pitch dark. Whatever light might have been behind me, that's gone. It'll take me months later to figure out that that was a portal, and that's how you got in and out. And they affected that change somehow, but your vibration was such low that you were able to negotiate that. And that explains how you got here with your boots on the ground, because 4D, 5D, these are still physical environments. And this is where we're moving into next. So when we get to the bottom, this area opens up into what I would call, I call it a staging area because I don't know what else to call it. And across from us, there are 5 more of these, what I've now kind of come to understand, these are old lava tubes. And when I look to my left immediately, there's this platform. It's about 6 foot by 6 foot, and it appears to have like 2 bucket seats on the top. No console or anything else, just this. There's another one over there to the left. And if I look to the right, there's another one over there. Well, while I'm looking, taking all this in, Alex had made his way over to the seat on the opposite side and sat down and indicated for me to sit next to him. As soon as my butt hit that seat, this thing started to levitate and off we went into the middle tube. What I noticed immediately, the 3D part of me is waiting for the sensation of like wind to go by me. There wasn't any of that. And yet we're still moving, I can tell. And as we get through this tube, I can start to see light coming from the other side. And as it does, this tube you can see is lined with crystals all over it. And every inch you move forward changes the light refraction. It was like you were in a freaking kaleidoscope. It was amazing and wonderful, and I didn't want it to stop until we got to the opening. And all of a sudden, now we're in level 1 of Telos. And Alex takes us up so that I have a view of the entire city like you've seen in photographs. You've seen cityscapes. So the orientation of the area is circular. In the middle of what I'm seeing is a huge white pyramid with a capstone. When I look to see where this ends up, you can't tell where the top of this thing is. I'm looking for a source of light because this place is lit like daylight, but there's no streams. It's not like there's a portal there where the sun comes in. It's not like that at all. And later you'll understand that, you know, they program crystals to hold light, and they can activate them so that they can have a sickler, you know, kind of day if that's what you choose. They have the technology to be able to do that. Anyway, everything is crystalline. It's just beautiful. I noticed one particular round place over here that later will play a role in this visit. But as I'm looking through this, it's just fairy tale-ish. When I started to see this, thinking, how in the world are you ever going to explain this to somebody else? You just want the ability to be able to take your mind out like a VR helmet and here, put this on, Jody, and you can see what I saw. That's what I wished. So anyway, as we were going along, he was explaining things like the nature of the Lemurian council, who was on it, the nature of the king queen, um, how they were governed, how many levels there were. And as we made our way through, he came down closer to the surface, and I could begin to see, pods of Lemurians here. There's a couple over there, and three over there. And as I went by, there were 5 or 6 that I could make eye contact with as we were going by. And when I did, Jody was like, they knew me and I knew them. I don't know how, but yeah, like I've been here before. And again, before this happened, my knowledge of Lemurians was limited to what I had heard about them when I was studying about the Atlanteans, because that's what triggered me first. And the only reference I knew about Telos before this day was seeing it on the cover of a book in town earlier. That's it. So anyhow, we make our way to the 3rd level, which is where their hydroponic gardens are. And to try and explain the technologies that they use there with the minimal amount of soil that's required is incredible. And then when the idea that this all feeds the entire population here, that's a staggering amount of information to take in. And of course, my little Capricorn mind's going through, well, even if this perpetuated itself rapidly, which it does because of the way that things grow, there were a lot of other dots that had to connect for me to understand how this feeds this community. Take into consideration that when the story was originally told, we have this understanding that 25,000 of the Lemurians made it during the flood. That provisions had been made for up to 2 million, and there was space to accommodate them all. It just came on so quickly that that's all that made it. When I had first started to do my research 4 years ago, it had been suggested that the Lemurians, both on the surface and within, were numbering like 1.2 million. And then, was it early last summer? There was another channeling by a guy named Sam the Illusionist, who channels the Lemurians. And he puts the Lemurians on the surface and beneath at 4.7 million. Yeah, we're all busy. We're here to assist in the process. So when I was starting to do the math on how does this feed all of those, even if it was like 1 million people, how does it feed them? And that's when you have a better idea of where we're going and what they do. Those are light bodies. They eat because they enjoy eating, and their bodies use that energy in its entirety. No one has to worry about where the closest restroom is. That's not how they function. So they no longer have to eat that way to maintain their form like we do. These physical bodies require nourishment. They require maintenance. They eat because they like to eat. And, they've limited themselves to vegetarian diets, but it certainly lines up with what I understand. So once, all that kind of sunk in, we made our way back to the surface. And that building that I had talked about before, we made our way back over there. Now, when you saw this thing was rounded and was like a series of crystal panels that formed this circular room. I'll learn that this is the council chambers. There are 13 seats around a round table in the middle of it, but the entryway is like an open double door environment. Now, there's no doors there. And it wasn't the opening itself, but what I noticed that was etched into these panels on each side. When I first got to Mount Shasta, it was too late to hike the first day I was there. And so I just walked down Main Street, looking at shops to see what was there, what I saw. There was one shop in particular called Blue Child Gallery. And its Japanese proprietor and artist, Haruko, had some really interesting cards and illustrations in the window, so it drew you in. Now, when I got in there, this was during COVID. So it was the first day I'd ever been to Shasta at all. And she had shoe covers that were there for you to use. Of course, I interpreted that because of COVID. I thought you cover your shoes and this was some exercise. I would later learn that she's Japanese and this is just kind of the nature of their culture, that you remove your shoes and you can either walk around your socks or here, use these. I got that later. Anyway, when I saw that, I thought, well, there's some interesting things here. I'll come back another day and explore. And before I did, when I looked across the room and in front of me, she's got 10-foot ceilings in there, at least, maybe 12, because this illustration I'm looking at in front of me is 3 feet wide, 10 feet high, and there are many of them around the perimeter of this room. These are all light codes that she's illustrated by hand. And they are perfectly symmetrical on each side of this. She lays them out on the floor and they take months to do. And then she goes back and she colors them. Incredible. When I saw that code, there was something that just struck me in my core. I went, I need to come back here and see these. So 2 days later, I'll come back early morning when she first opened. So it's just me. And I'm walking around and there's really 3 places within the store. There's the first front that you see when you come in. It's pretty big space. Then there's kind of an area behind that in another room. And there's one more smaller room in the back that might be 10 by 10, maybe not even that big, 8 by 8, where she has 5 of these things posted up there. And when I went in there, I was just compelled to spend some time in front of those codes. So I went back out and I had already seen a little pillow that was in that room. And I said, do you mind if I sit back there for 10 minutes or so and meditate? She goes, that's what it's for. So she said, just close the door behind you and take whatever time. I didn't intend to be there for very long because I certainly didn't want to keep it to myself. But more than 20 minutes later, I came out of there and I was in tears. And it wasn't, there was no sadness associated with it. It was just whatever these codes were, man, I just took them in. I noticed the doorway as I went back out. And I noticed the codes on this side, which was the new earth. And I noticed this code right here, that was the new angelic blueprint. And those were the codes that were freaking etched in these crystal panels going into this room. When I saw them, I thought, I've seen these before. And I asked Alex, I said, these look familiar. He goes, oh yeah, those are Haruko's. Those codes are accurate, and that's why we inscribed them here. Well, now you move into the room, and I'm taking in the table is the only thing really wooden that I've seen in all of this. Most of the rest of it's crystal, and it's not that it isn't inlaid with crystals as well. But it's the environment in the room that's got my attention. And I can feel something like pressing into my heart core while I'm in this space. And it's just like the best hug you've ever had. It like continually compresses into your heart space. So I laughed to myself because I thought, well, this is where you have meetings. You just soften people up on the way into their meetings, and they're all pliable with whatever you want to achieve. So as I'm taking in this atmosphere, I can see 5 more people coming my way. I can tell that there are 4 females that are flanking a male in the middle. All of them are taller than I am, but the male in the middle is taller than that. And if I can believe the illustrations I've seen, that's a Dhamma. It turned out that yes, that is in fact who it is. So they invited me to take a seat at the table, and they sat 3 on either side of me. They began by introducing themselves and telling me a little bit about what role they play. It didn't take a lot of time. And to be quite honest, all of it was a blur. I could remember Alex. I can remember Adama. And I remembered the first woman who spoke, Shyama, because after this, she seemed to chair the meeting. It was her that was going to kind of, the exchanges were going to come from here. So I'm going to find out what I'm doing there. Well, she went on to begin to explain that they also sense that the shift is imminent. And they're preparing for when they can reintroduce themselves with the surface. They have technologies that they would love to share with us, but only when humanity's consciousness rises to the same level as theirs. You know, there had been more visits to the surface that at first, think of it, in order for them to come into this density, they have to drop their vibration in order to experience third dimension, which is why they tend to stay out of here or find areas that vibrate at higher levels so that they can make those exchanges. But that's what has prevented them largely from being here on the surface. But as you've heard already and you've sensed, the veils are thinning, and that experience between us and higher dimensions is happening with us on this side already. So there's more opportunities for not just them, not just inner earth beings, but these beyond earth sentients that we've been talking about. They're also making a presence, and they're here doing their own little fam trips. Let's get back to Telos, because that's another rabbit hole that we can certainly go down. But anyway, once she explained that to me, like, I'm thrilled. This is July of 2020, and it had already computed through my mind that I had read many resources that talked about winter solstice in 2020 and something significant that was going to happen then in terms of the shift. Now, I was fully aware of all these cosmic cycles that had taken place and to seem to reset at zero in 2012. Got that. It took me to really understand that our entire solar system took until 2016 until it was really bathed in this cosmic photon band of information coming at us from the central sun. And science really assisted me in helping me understand. That was one of the first concepts I really got, was the cosmos and their effect on the rest of the universe. So when you see a little Earth over here, make sure that you understand we're part of this little solar system, which is part of this galactic galaxy, and our central sun feeds and nourishes all of it. Well, we've been through cosmic cycles, and that age of Aquarius, we passed into it in 2012, and we're going to occupy this band of higher photon energy for the next 2,000 years. This is why our consciousness is rising. Every sentient being, not just on Earth, but if there's other sentient life everywhere in the universe, is being affected by this rise in consciousness. And if we understand that every conscious being in the universe is on a path of evolution, why wouldn't we believe that Earth is too? She's done with her third density experiences. She's had all those lessons. She is almost elevated to fourth. You know that when these hyperdimensions overlap, that's when we can start to experience both. But very soon, she's through whatever membrane that she needs to negotiate to fully embody herself in this next dimension. And third dimensional vibrations have no space. They just aren't supported. This is why we are all talking about getting your chakras clear, getting yourself in alignment in an attempt for you somehow, consciously or unconsciously, to value your vibration level and where the earth is going. So once I was thrilled with what they were saying, because it certainly mirrored what I believed was going to happen. Then I was to find out why it was me. It won't be until months later that somebody suggested, well, you know why they invited you in. I said, no, if you can enlighten me, I'd appreciate it, because you're one of them. You're a Lemurian, Lowell, or at least that was somewhere along your timeline. That hadn't occurred to me until then. But anyway, I will learn later that Shyama gave me three things that she addressed. She said, first of all, you've already demonstrated that you can hold fifth dimensional awareness. So you're aware of this perspective of things. Two, we know you're the protector of Gaia. Now, I don't know where they came up with that. That came from an ayahuasca journey 2 years prior. That was put into my field from my ayahuasca and my interactions with Inner Earth. So that connected a dot 2 years before that I hadn't really paid attention to. And then the third was when, they explained that when Earth's consciousness rises to the level that they wish to commune with the surface, bring to us all the technologies that they have to offer, because humans aren't without merit. There's a certain amount of creativity, and they can manifest pretty much whatever they wish. They've lost the edge that us humans have in this third dimension thing, because really, what's our impulse? It's to make things better. And how do we do that? Well, we inject our emotions into the decisions that we make. They're beyond really that third dimensional thing that gives our emotions fire. That, looks at a situation and I want to change it. And oftentimes we hope you want to make it better. We can see that there's certainly different ends of the spectrum when it comes to that. But that's primarily why humans are so valuable. The entire galaxy is watching what humanity is capable of. And if we were to look back with any sense of remorse, maybe it's that we had been manipulated along the way. And humanity really had not had the opportunity to really demonstrate what they really could do if they were left to their own devices. So that's exactly what's coming now. That your DNA that's been tucked inside of you for a while, and you've been operating on 2 of the 12 strands, dude, many of you are operating on more of that right now, whether you realize it or not. And that's why you get to experience the things you've experienced. But there's more. You're about to open that bandwidth up wide. And whoever prepared us for that? Who told us about this? We were told it was junk DNA. It is not junk. It's the stuff that holds all those things you referred to earlier as the things you're being reminded of. You are unlocking those things by triggers that come your way or some kind of influence, whether it was me talking about Lemurians and it got your attention and all of a sudden there's more to it than that. This is why people are crossing your path to do that now. So once they asked if I would be willing to be an emissary, looking back on it, that's exactly the purpose I've served. I came and incarnated back in the early 50s, like a lot of us indigo children that came to respond to Earth's call. I came to be on this side of the incarnation so that I could assist when the time came. So when they asked me to be an emissary, I thought that was a new concept. I would have to sit with it for a while to understand really my role and who I am and what I'm doing here on Earth right now. It was to be here to do that very thing. Now, I say that like I'm not the only special one. I'm not the only former Lemurian walking on the planet. There are many of us that are awakening into this right now. So I'm not putting out there that I'm any more special than anybody else. I just have a greater awareness of what's happening than many people do. But again, I'm here in the same way that you reached out because it triggered something in you. That's happening on a more wide scale and much more accelerated pace, it seems to me. That I look at my journey and how quickly it adapted. And now I keep hearing people really within the same time frame who somehow had gone through their entire 3D world until this period, and then something else woke in them. And now all we can do is we just need to know more about whatever that is for whatever the reasons. And so here we are. Anyway, with that, when I agreed and said yes, it was really the only words I had uttered. I would be honored to do that, because at first it's why me is the first thought in your head, and you don't say that out loud. I would be honored, and the meeting was over. Like, these people, we get shit done and we're out of here. They thanked me and left. And then Alex and I made our way back to that staging area. Now, I had two questions before I left. One, can I tell anybody about this? And he said, you can tell everybody. We want people to know that we're here, and we want them to take seriously that we exist and we're not the only ones. And secondly, I wanted to know if I was going to be able to return. And his answer was, yes, you'll be able to return before the shift. No real idea of when, but yes, the door will be open to you when the time comes. I have not physically gone back yet. I'm looking forward to it, but clearly other things have found their way into my field. And that had to do more with ultra-terrestrial and extraterrestrial influence. Since Dave Wallace kind of made his way to the tribe and explained the protocols on reaching out with them for the last several months, I see myself as kind of a bridge in between. And now it makes much more sense to everybody when we see what we think are these lenticular clouds over Shasta and other areas. Yeah, we know what they really are. That's a shroud for the information and the communication and the traffic that's going in and out of there. Some of it we see, some of it we don't, but it's taking place. So did we not think there was some connection between off-planet and inner Earth? Think again. Of course there is. So when I got the answer to my question, the next thing I knew, I was back sitting where I was before all of this happened. I somehow in the days made my way back to the car. And when I got closer to the parking lot, that's when I started to giggle at all the other people around me, thinking that you have no idea where I just came from. And it has just spawned into the next thing. It'll take me months to understand that that would be my first multidimensional experience, and certainly far from the last. When that happens to you in your third dimensional being the first time, you think that this story is the one you're always going to tell. Well, it's one of them, but it was the awakening that was going to lead to the ability for you to have other ones. I have a greater appreciation now for whatever higher influence is coming my way, and not just mine, all of us, that we're kind of spoon-fed in baby steps. We're going to show you a little bit to get used to that idea so we can show you what we really want to show you, which if we did right now, would be so overwhelming for you that we would defeat the purpose of helping you try to comprehend it. The downloads that I've heard from others as well as mine resonates that some of this came so that I had the capacity to understand what they were trying to communicate. So those downloads you first got just put you in a space where I can comprehend this vibration that they're sending. And now they can send light packages that I can actually make something out of. The interpreter had to be in place. And you don't have any sense of any of that until down the road when you look back and see how things unfold. Now you have a method to the process. And I always wanted to understand the process so that I could explain it to others. That part where you explain that this was meant for others, I fully embrace that. I never said and don't promote that I was going to be the only one and you'd all have to come to me for information. No, I'm here to pass the baton. And whatever light I interpreted, came my way, it's my job to hand the baton to you so that you can continue to do the work and help enlighten others. You don't have to keep coming back like I'm a well and drawing from it anymore. You'll get what you were supposed to get from me. And the tribe has now found one more member. Oh, we know to find one another if we need each other, but we know that there's other work to be done. And we're just feeding ourselves that light component that we know is coming, and now we know what to do with it. There's a lot of still negative energy that needs to be transmuted into light, and that's our job.
100%. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Wow, so beautifully put, all of this. Um, did the Telosians communicate with you verbally or telepathically?
Both. Um, when I heard Alex's voice, because that certainly was what got my attention the first time, that had to be in kind of some physical form. He sounded, to me a little like Australian. British, there was that kind of flavor to his inflections. And so you make of it what you can in your little third dimensional mind, because you need to label it somehow so that I
Yeah.
can understand it. Once we get past the idea that we have to freaking label everything and we just let things kind of work through us, wow, do things open up after that?
Mm. So you mentioned, I mean, that's, obviously I've heard your story before, so it's like a nice recap in my mind. But anyone else who's watching, listening to this right now is going to be like reeling with like, what? Yeah, so many questions, or right, and that's natural. And then the kind of question of, is this true, right? Is this really true? And how can I know it to be true? And so with that, I will say to those in that place, like, what do you know inside you? What do you know inside you? For me, it's a remembrance. It's an activation to remember. And it's, yeah, Lowell is the person, the emissary in this particular case, right? For this information to be activating your memory banks, your DNA, your Akash record, so that you can be more of who you are now in this place at this time. And then there are these, right, that we had a chat in the other call about the other places of the inner earth, and how that's also interacting with the surface. And Glastonbury is one of these places. So I recently spent some beautiful, beautiful times there last year, summer into autumn, and it was an incredible activation for me. I mean, I was just like, what is going on? And so many magical synchronicities and downloads. And I started to write a book about the kind of inner Glastonbury of Avalon, what is known as Avalon. And then I somehow, through I think your channel or something, came across this information about the inner earth under Glastonbury, called Utklaha, and that opened doorways in my conscious. That was an activate. I was just like, oh, okay, I kind of get this whole thing much more now, right? Because just as Mount Shasta is like this energetic portal of vortices, and there's so much happening there, also Glastonbury, Avalon is also this place, and there's a inner earth component to it, as well as what we have experiences on the surface, and activations and fairies and so many different, right? I mean, I say it's definitely a place to pilgrimage to. And like these other places on the planet, power spots. And I'm going to Bali in May, and I'm going to lead a retreat there. And it's all because of this activation, this power spot, this potential, this potentiality, this light that wants to be experienced, seen, lived, remembered more. And it's an eternal curiosity and excitement for me to do that. So and of course it's all about, okay, what excites you, and what is your, you know, curiosity, and where do you want to go, every person, right? Like, what is the
Mhm.
true dance for you, the true expression for you, your authentic nature? And I heard recently that it's actually a video that just came up on my feed which was someone talking about how some group had done a study about some kind of frequencies or electromagnetic vibrations that emanate from the human, and that they found through this study that actually the frequency or the state or mood of authenticity was the highest frequency, beyond love. Now, I'm not saying it is or it isn't, just saying this is what I heard. And it's like, it's so interesting because authenticity, what is authenticity? Well, it's just like the totality of who you are, expressed unapologetically in all the spectrum of who you are. It's like the fully activated DNA 12-strand incarnation of who you are is truly the authentic you, right? It's
Yes.
beyond, it's all of the spectrum, all of the rays, all of the everything is the authentic expression of who you are. So it makes total sense. I'm like, oh my goodness, of course.
We, until whatever happened, we weren't able to tap into whatever that was. We had limited ourselves to whatever we had absorbed. Either we were conditioned by things in our lives, or we were taught whatever we knew. And so we only relied on what we thought we contained in our little brains. Well, we didn't understand the brain in itself is interpreter, and we receive that information through our third eye and the pineal gland. And that's what really connects us to wisdom that we've archived away in past incarnations, and we certainly have access to. But the nature of incarnations in this Earth experiment was you're going to wipe your memory banks clean, and keep in mind the lessons that you signed up for during this soul contract. You're going to knock them out along your journey. And oh, by the way, you're going to learn some good things and bad things. But that is what you came here to do, little human. Your soul chose to come here and help source know more about itself. You're part of the evolution process. So those lessons that you chose, you have to learn the contrast between the good and the bad stuff. And you tuck that away in your Akash so that sooner or later, the collective benefits from all the things we've all gone through. So thank you, Jody, for the shitty things that you had to go through on my behalf. And you're welcome for the things I had to.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Hey everyone. I hope you enjoyed this extract from the main interview. So you can find the full interview on this channel. Just look for the full interview video, Journey to Telos. And if you would like to share any experiences you've had around Telos or Mount Shasta, then please do comment on this video and let me know what you have to share. You may also contact me through my website as well, jodydeane.co, which is JODYDEANE.co. Or Lowell as well. Lowell's website, I think, is it's on here. It's on the main. It'll be in the description. I'll put it in the description. I don't know it off the top of my head right now, but yes, I hope this was super inspiring for you. And for more inspiration, I have a masterclass called Elevate Your Spirit, the Way of the Heart. Now, you might be interested in that. So if you are, it is completely free, gifted masterclass, 1.5 hours. And that is on my website. The replay is up for a limited time only on my website. So if you go to my website, jody.deane.co, you'll see it there on the menu bar, and you can watch it right there or listen to it right there on my website. I'm also excited to launch this Inner Heart Circle membership that is announced on the masterclass right at the end, and on the same page you can connect with that too and find out more about it. Again, if you have any questions, ask me more about that through contacting me on the website. You could also, I guess, comment on this video too. Anyway, wishing you a wonderful adventure in this life. And I really strongly recommend to catch the full interview with Lowell. We go deeper with the elements around consciousness activation, which are super important in these times of the great revealing, the ascension process, the acceleration of consciousness in this realm, which many of us are needing support with to navigate, because it just gets more intense as time goes by, and as more revelations come out, there is more incoherence than in the field as things shift, but the inner coherence is always more stronger, if you know what I mean. So we have this on the external, in the 3D, in the physical, in the consciousness of humanity, society, politics, the news. We have increasingly polarized viewpoints, increased chaos, and all of this craziness happening, which is just amping up more and more and more as people trust the media less, and so are looking for alternative viewpoints, and ultimately are being directed by spirit to go within, to look within, because all power ultimately lies within. Don't take my word for it, check it out for yourself. And be your own kind of researcher and scientist with this, because you get to choose and you get to experience, and you don't have to take anyone's word for it. But increasingly, those who are awake, the light workers, the alchemists, the truth tellers, the truth seekers, in fact, as well, are experiencing this, that there is this amping up of energy that is increasing, and particularly with the changes of the seasons, the planetary alignments, the solar eclipses, the lunar eclipses, the four kind of corners of the calendar, the equinoxes and the solstices. It's all these get more intense, these portal points in the year, and also these alignment days, like numerological alignment days, like 11/11, etc., are all super potent and super activating, and you may really start to feel it. Many of us have been feeling them for many years, and as you get more sensitive, as you get more attuned to the inner, you're going to really start to experience these shifts, and this is really going to change your life, basically. So the advice here is to go within, to learn to meditate if you're not already doing that, and deepen your meditation practice. Do the healing work, do the inner work, do the inner work. It's so important to love yourself. Be compassionate to yourself. Love yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be true to yourself, no matter what. And with these two sides of honesty and compassion, you will be well served to navigate these incredible shifts on the planet that are unprecedented in terms of the history of the last thousands of years, and it's an immense opportunity for growth, for transformation, and for rebirth, and it is a dimensional shift. So this is the most exciting thing about it. And what does that mean? Well, listen to the the main full interview with Lowell and I, because we really dive deep into that kind of dimensional shift and, you know, what this whole story of Telos and what Lowell experienced and what that really means. I'd also recommend to go to these portal points on the planet and, you know, see for yourself, feel it out for yourself, connect with the portals yourself. I particularly love Glastonbury. You know, this is my home country, the heart of my home country, the sacred heart of Britain is Glastonbury, and, you know, it's been a pilgrimage site for 10,000 years. That has to tell you something. And it is, you know, an immense portal right there. Glastonbury, Avalon. What Avalon really is an immense portal. I'm writing a book about that as well at the moment, about Avalon. So this is a place for me, for example, which has been an absolute expansion, incredible place of multidimensional activation. And it just, you have to experience it to believe it, because otherwise it's just like fairy tales, right? And you know, maybe you have an inner knowing, and so you have to follow that. And so find your place, wherever that is, your power point, your portal points. You know, it might be your local temple, it might be the yew tree in your park, it might be, you know, the rocky outcrop just outside of your town, which has got, you know, augmented, you know, electromagnetic energies and earth energies moving through it. It might be something else, a cave, it might be the sea, it might be a lake, it might be a meadow, right? So it's just finding these places where we can really kind of dial in the inner being, being with horses, being with animals, being with plants. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.